Eric Birbeck joined the Navy in 1964, serving for 32 years. In 1993, on the HM yacht Britannia, Eric suffered his first anaphylactic reaction, which nearly ended his life.
A complete mystery still to me, 20 years on. We had left India and arrived in Aden in October of 1993. My wife had flown out to Aden to join me because British Airways was opening up a direct air route to Aden, and as part of that support, Britannia visited Aden, and all the heads of British Airways and the Navy as such were there for 2 or 3 days, and they took the opportunity to fly a few wives out, my wife being one of them. We'd been invited to the British Embassy for lunch and proceeded to the embassy. My other 2 medical colleagues on board, Andy Travis, who was my other medical colleague, and Robin McNeil-Love, who was the principal medical officer, the doctor on board. They had other engagements, and so we split and arrived at the British Embassy, and there was a barbecue lunch, which naturally you start to partake of. And luckily enough, my 2 colleagues had changed their minds and come directly to the British Embassy. And within about 20 minutes of having the meal, I started to feel fairly lousy. I felt very weak, very faint, and for some unknown reason, I felt as if I was going to collapse. But I took myself off, really a silly thing to do, to the cloakroom and sort of splashed my face and sort of came back, by which time I was staggering, to be met by my colleague Andy, who looked at me and he said, "You're not good and your head is about to explode." And I knew I had some sort of reaction. I'd never ever suffered from any reaction at all before in my life. And whereupon I collapsed. And my wife was quite concerned. My colleagues were concerned. They summoned a car and actually got me into the back of one of the embassy's vehicles. And I was very much aware that Robin, the doctor, was actually undoing a pen to get the outer plastic shell. And he'd opened up a penknife, and I knew damn well that he was going to try and make a hole in my throat, because my throat had all swollen. I could hardly breathe. My chest felt as if someone had put a vice around it. And I was very conscious of, it was as if I was at the bottom of a large well and people were talking to you from the well's edge. And with that, I basically started to sort of pass out. And I came round about 2 or 3 hours later and obviously was told that I'd had some form of allergic, anaphylactic as it's known, reaction. And I still felt fairly lousy. Now, what was it? That was the big question. Somebody said that I'd had a bad prawn or a crab, you know, being a barbecue, badly prepared, instant reaction from... But I then left a couple of days later. My wife flew back and thought nothing of it until December of that year, 93, when I was home on leave, and I had another reaction.
And was there a point where you thought maybe you were going to die?
Yes. Oh, yes. Yes, when you're on the other side of the veil and your vision is starting to go and you damn well know that you're not breathing very well. From my point of view, because of my training, I knew that it would only be a matter of minutes and I'd be gone.
So what was going through your mind at that point?
For me, frustration, because I had put together all the medical emergency equipment on board. And I was the first person it was used on. So there's a little bit of something that goes to make sure that you get it right the first time, no matter what you're doing, because it might be you who uses it.
Once you'd recovered after the first time, what did you say to the medical colleagues that basically saved your life?
Absolutely immensely grateful. You never ever expect to have to be a patient yourself with your own colleagues. You're normally a team that works together on other people. And even to this day, I still, although we're not in the Navy anymore, we're like brothers, really.
And how do you think your wife felt at that time?
Frightened. she said to me at the time, I've not come all this way to lose you. I think it'd be different if it was down the end of the high street in Winchester or something, but to actually be in Aden, some sort of 8,000 or 9,000 miles away in a foreign land, it just brings it home to you a little bit.
After that first reaction, did you think the ordeal was over at that point?
In a way, yes, but in another way, you sit and your mind starts to think, what if, what else? And of course, you get lulled into a false sense of security. I had a major attack on Saturday evening last. So, yes, I spent a couple of months thinking it might not happen again. It did. And it's as if your body and the reaction you have starts to remind you, don't rest, because it's just around the corner.
So after the second attack, did you decide to make any plans to avoid the same situation happening again?
I tried my best, but I still didn't quite know what the problem was. It wasn't till 2 years later, when I'd had this humus, that I suddenly began to realise what the contents were and what the compound of it was, i.e. tahini paste, compounded sesame seeds. What really started to annoy me and fire me up was I then went in to search for what the content was, went to the place where it was actually purchased, which was a local supermarket, and to start to question them about it, and to basically receive a reply of, when you started to explain, the person saying to you, so what? You sort of feel yourself sort of pulling your hand out to put around their throat on account of the fact that, it's your life that's been endangered, knowing what the outcome could be.
Did you feel at any point before finding out that it was sesame seeds that you were starting to get any sort of control over what was happening?
Not really. It took some years before I had a major control. But I was very, very much helped by various people within the various anaphylaxis groups who were there for you to lean on. But I also knew of people who had the same reaction, who wouldn't even leave the house, or they wouldn't even eat elsewhere. And they felt sort of, really sort of hemmed in. I wasn't going to be like that. I think it's because of the fact that I'd travelled the world, I could face things and everything else, and felt slightly in control. And since all this, 18 months ago, I actually went to China and survived, because I took a background daily drug that helped with me in the way of histamine release, which is the main cause of anaphylaxis. And I also had some cards printed in Mandarin and Cantonese to tell people what my problem was. And I ate 2 major lunches in a hotel. But boy, do you get service, because if you show people these, the chef in one of them came out and sat beside me to tell me what was in the dishes.
You said a lot how it's affected your life. Did it affect much of your career?
No, it's never affected me, never held me back at all. I've always been aware of what I have, and I've always been very much to the front in informing my friends and colleagues and family.
So how have you managed to overcome this problem?
I haven't, because I've still got it. I have to live with it. I think that's the easiest way to answer you on that one. In some things in life where you've got diseases, you've got problems, either psychiatric or alcoholic, things like that, you can actually work on curing them. I believe there's no cure. I now have this allergy, which I've lived with for the last 20 years.